Everybody Googles everything, especially potential customers or employers, and a business or personal online reputation can make or break you. If negative search results or reviews are impacting you, Webamax is here to help. Our proven process restores your online reputation quickly and effectively, and it matters. Don't let negative results control your narrative. Visit GoWebamax.com and fill out a brief confidential form to see how we can help. Remember, if you aren't paying attention to your online reputation, someone else is. GoWebamax.com.
For the ones who know safety isn't a catchphrase, it's a culture. And the ones who help make sure everyone makes it home safe. For the safety-minded who watch everyone's backs, Grainger offers supplies and solutions for every industry, as well as safety assessments and training to keep your facilities safe and your people safer. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hey there, Duke fans. Welcome to DBR Podcast, episode 630. 630 of these puppies in the books now. Well, I guess when we're done with this, it'll be in the books. I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, we're on episode number 630. I'm Jason Evans. Joining me is Donald Wine. Donald, how you doing today?
Doing pretty good. Jason, I just want to give a quick shout out to the Duke baseball team and the Duke softball team. They are both out of their respective tournaments, unfortunately. But definitely made us proud with the long run they had. Duke baseball getting out in the regionals, Duke softball in the College World Series, their first ever trip to the World Series. So I know next year they're coming back stronger than ever with a bunch of group. But like especially for softball, to be in the World Series in year 7, I know what I was when I was 7 years old. I was not in the World Series, Jason. So that's very good.
Yeah, very, very impressive performance by them. Donald, I want us to go ahead and dive into it right now. By the way, I was going to say, you and I were debating before the episode came on, is this going to be a bites or is this a full episode? I'm not sure exactly what defines a bites versus a full episode anymore. If we know it's going to be shorter, it's a DBR bites for sure. And I'm not certain how long this one's going to go, but we're calling this one a full episode because we do have several different topics we want to get to. I want folks to know that a little bit later on, we're going to be talking about Duke's academics, specifically the academics of the basketball team, and some really good numbers that just recently came out. We have been critical on this podcast when Duke has not performed as it should academically, and we are quite happy a little bit later on to be telling all of you about how Duke is performing. But we're going to start with something that literally, so it's sort of funny, I should say. You and I, I'm not sure we had any top, like a day or so ago. We were like, what are we going to talk about? I'm not sure.
We were grasping at straws, ladies and gentlemen. Then like you had the APR stuff and a couple of things we're going to talk about. Like, all right, cool. We can put this together. And then Jason says, I got some more stuff.
Exactly. Then like in the past 24 hours, things just started coming in fast and heavy. Literally, I kid you not, 15, 30 minutes ago or so before we recorded this podcast, I spoke to someone who, I'm not going to tell you who they are, but man, this is someone who is very, very close to what was happening on the court at K Academy. And I'm not talking about the games involving people like you and me, Donald. I'm talking about the games involving professional and, former and current and upcoming Duke basketball players. This is someone who really knows what was going on there. And he had heard a little bit about some of the intel that we had on the previous episode where we talked about, some of what we were hearing from K Academy. And he and I have spoken in the past, and he reached out to me because he wanted to add a little more color and texture. Let's just put it that way. The very first thing he said to me, Sion James, he said, is ready to play right now at a very, very high level. Said this guy is a great vocal floor leader. And, I've been the guy on the Sion James train, like from the moment we signed this dude, prior to me having breakfast with him in New Orleans. So it's not,
that helped.
It's not just, right. It's not just have a meal with Jason and Jason suddenly becomes your biggest fan. I was already hearing really great stuff about this guy even prior to this. And now that he has arrived on campus at Duke, I was the only person saying Sion James going to be a starter. I'm telling you, there are people saying Sion James is going to be a starter for this team. I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see. I wanted to also mention, seeing as this person was talking about Sion's leadership and his vocal leadership on the court and off the court, I was also informed that Mason Gillis is someone who seems like a leader, and that there is a real focus by the team, specifically by the coaches, to try and coax Caleb Foster into being a real leader for this team, to get him to come a little bit out of his shell, and that people feel that's a really important part of what this team needs. And it was stressed to me, by the way, that no one seems to think there are going to be any problems with personalities, with egos, with jealousy, anything like that, even though this appears to be a very stacked Duke roster. It is, one of the reasons we talk about, who's going to be a starter and things like that, is it is very hard to figure out, the roles that all these guys play. And they're clearly 9-10 guys at least that you can make a really great case for. That guy's going to play 25 minutes a game. Not everyone's going to get to play 25 minutes a game. It's just not possible. But that's sort of the nature of this roster. And what this person said to me was that these are not guys, these are not personalities who are going to be frustrated and angry if they aren't the guy who's playing 25 minutes a game. That this is a team that is really, really bought in already, like from day one. And I think that's a fascinating thing to hear.
And, I don't want to throw cold water on this, but I will just temporarily, right? Because we are, again, talking about the first week of the first set of pickup games for the summer. There is still a honeymoon period, so to speak, with all the guys getting to campus and getting to know each other. Thankfully, the honeymoon period will end during the summer. It will end behind kind of the closed doors of the summertime. It won't end in December when all the lights are on you, in November when we're playing actual games. That's where this team will get to know each other, right? And that's what this whole summer, but this is why guys come back for the summer. This is why guys stick around for the summer, is because they want people to get to know each other. And I think the coaching staff has done a great job at getting everybody to campus, because that's not, as we've talked about, that's not always a thing that happens where almost everybody is on campus at the same time this early. It usually takes a couple of weeks for everyone to kind of stagger in from wherever. But I think the great thing is, now that we have everybody on campus, with the exception of Patrick Ngongba, who is away on a camp, and we'll start to lose a couple people, like Kama Malawach, due to other obligations. The great thing is these guys get to understand, hey, this is what we want to see from you this summer. This is how you're going to get to know your teammates, right? And when we talk about Caleb Foster coming out of his shell and becoming more of a leader, he will have his right-hand man next to him, Tyrese Proctor, who is already a captain, to help him with that. He will have Mason Gillis, who was a captain at Purdue. He will have Sion James, who was a captain at Tulane, right? He has those guys that are able to show not just Caleb Foster, but even the freshmen, what it means to be a leader on the floor. And even if you, like I mentioned in the last podcast, even if you don't have the quote captain's armband on your arm, you can still be a leader in several ways. And this is how you do it. Ryan Young, the first year when he was at Duke, he wasn't the captain, but he exhibited captain leadership qualities when he was on the floor, and that helped the actual captains do their job. That's what we all need. And again, the four guys that I mentioned aren't all going to be captain. They could be, but they may not all be captain. Right. But at the end of the day, that doesn't mean the leadership ends because they step on the floor. They're not deemed captain, right? They still can provide leadership. Cooper Flag can still provide leadership. Isaiah Evans can provide leadership. Whoever those guys are, everyone understanding their roles this early on is a great, great sign for this team, that they can work through anything once the nice new car smell wears off over the summer and they start getting into the grind. That's when they're going to become a team. That's when they're going to have those little bickering battles and stuff like that. And then they'll go have barbecues and get to know each other and really become friends off the court, as well as, warriors on the court where they can rely on each other. This is a good thing. And the fact that guys are doing well or doing poorly in these practices, these pickup games, doesn't mean much. But all of this is starting to build the foundation for what this 2024-25 team will be.
So I want to give a little more from the conversation I had with this person who really knows what was happening in the multiple scrimmages, the multiple workouts that players had at K Academy, not always in front of the K Academy attendees. I was told that my report earlier was that Con Knipple was not super impressive. I was told stick that in your back pocket and throw it away. This person thought Con may have been the second most impressive freshman behind Cooper Flagg of everybody out there for Duke, that his shot was falling and that he was not backing down even from playing against NBA type players, which is some of the guys that were involved in this, Dukies who are currently and formerly in the NBA. And I was told about Cooper Flagg that when he was going up against other freshmen, yeah, he looks unbelievable. But when you started to put him up against the transfers, these guys who've been in college for a few years, started to put him up against pros, that he struggled a little bit more. I don't think that should come as a surprise to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
But what was stressed to me was that Cooper is going to have to learn to adjust, to get better, to figure out how to play against guys who know how to play more than he does right now. And that will be a process for him. And that the Cooper that you have early in the year probably is not going to be nearly the Cooper that you have at the end of the season. And it was stressed to me that Kamen Malawach is the same kind of way, that he is just still super, super, super raw. And yeah, that size, he's every bit of 7'2". That size is really impressive, but his footwork, his hands, his understanding, his game IQ, that kind of stuff, these things really, really need a lot of work. Hopefully he'll get some of that playing in the Olympics this summer.
Jason, you just broke news. Cooper Flagg apparently is human when amongst guys that are older than him. This is new to me. This is a new
right.
This is a new development. But again, like you said, not surprised by that and actually kind of encouraged by it, right? You don't need everything to go perfectly the first week, right? You want guys who can, again, understand that they're going to be humbled by, like you said, a couple of guys who might be playing in the NBA right now. Like they're going to be humbled by them. And also it gives them something to look for. Like, hey, I know I need to get to what this guy is playing at this level for me to be able to excel, not just in college, but to achieve all the goals that I want to be in the NBA and be an all pro athlete, right? You have to take some bumps along the way. And I'll stress this again later in the podcast, but Jason, I've used analogy before. The best stock charts are not straight lines. They are up and down jagged things. But if you look at one day, it may look like the world went to hell, right? You may look, man, everybody's sold on me. Everybody is lost. They don't care. The next day, you kind of pull back that chart and you look at it over time and you see that the thing is going up. And that's what this needs to be. Like you said, Con Knipple in one report, people looked at that one day and said, not going to make it. You pull back the chart a little bit longer and you see what he's been doing over the week. You have another guy saying, this kid's going to make it. He's going to be okay. And I think when it comes to these guys, everyone should take stock in that, not just practice by practice, game by game throughout the year. We love to overanalyze these things, which is great. That part of that is great, but take some time during the season as well to peel back the map a little bit and look at the progress that we have from today to whatever point you're looking at, because I guarantee you that is a stock chart that is going up.
So Donald, I want to move on to our next topic now. And it does somewhat relate to K Academy and to new players in the program and all the other kind of jazz. There was a new episode of the Brotherhood Podcast that was dropped this week. Rather than Ryan Young, for the first time, we got a non-Ryan Young host. Our host this week was Jay Bilas, and Jay was interviewing John Scheyer. It's about a 45 to 50 minute long episode. I am betting that most of you out there who are listening to the two of us right now have already listened to the episode. But if you haven't, we're going to go through it a little bit. And even if you have, I want us to be able to highlight some of the very, very interesting stuff that Jay Bilas and John Scheyer were talking about on this episode of the Brotherhood Podcast. First of all, I loved hysterical stuff at the beginning about the K Academy. Jay Bilas talked about the fact that some of the guys who play for him, they were like, treat us the way Coach K treated you. And Jay's like, no, You don't want me to do that.
Can't do that. Yeah, you can't do that anymore.
Right.
I
You
also
don't want me to treat you the way Kay treated me.
Jason, I also liked how they were talking about, I think they're talking about how Jay Lucas is possibly the worst coach in the history of K Academy. Like those are the things that we need to hear, guys, on the brother. We need to peel back the onion. Tell us who's good at this. Tell us who's really, really bad at this. And of course, they're joking like Jay Lucas is going to be a head coach in college one day.
Yeah.
But he's not going to be coaching billionaire athletes and 100,000-aire athletes who are living out their dreams of playing in Cameron on one bum foot. So he won't have to worry about that rest of his career. But yeah, it's good. Again, it's good to see some humility from these guys.
Yeah. Speaking of the billionaire athletes, I loved Jay told a very, very funny story. Jay Bilas did about a guy who had in playing in one of his games who gave up a couple live ball turnovers that resulted in layups. Jay pointed out that each turnover is equal to like 5 possessions because no one can hit more than about 20%.
No one can hit more
shots.
than 20%. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So he's like, this guy gave up back-to-back bad turnovers that led to easy layups for the other team. Jay called a timeout, was just reaming the guy and was saying like, I don't know what you do for a living, but if someone did that at your workplace, you'd probably fire them. And then a week later, Jay sees the guy on CNBC and he's like CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company. I thought that was hysterical.
This is exactly what the K Academy is like. And from people that I know that have been there, I would love to go. Again, if someone wants to sponsor me, dbrpodcast@gmail.com. I'll even train for it. But I don't have $1 billion like some of these guys have. But it's very funny because you see guys that like, even in the videos, you'll see guys and like, I know that guy looks familiar. And then you see like a billboard with that person's face on it. You're like, oh, that's the guy that won the K Academy. Cool.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So let's move on from their comments about K Academy to what we really wanted to talk about, which is some of the comments that John Scheyer had about the basketball team, about the incoming team. We're going to play a little piece of sound for you now where Scheyer talks, a bit about the makeup of Duke's team, not just this year, but moving forward. How many freshmen, how many experienced players, how many transfers does he expect to have on the team? And then it moves into them talking about the current transfers who are coming in, the current players who are coming in, both the freshmen and the transfers, and their mental makeup. Because I think this soundbite, you're going to listen to about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. What John Scheyer is saying here speaks volumes about what he wants from his Duke basketball teams. Have a listen.
And so for our team, it has to be a balance of going forward, probably not going to be a class of 6 freshmen, more so 4 or 3, or maybe the max would be 5. Ideally, you have 3 to 5 players returning, although some years it may be 2, some years it could be 6, and then 1 or 2 transfers. And that's the way, at least right now, with the way it's set up in college, being at Duke is the most successful way for us, and that we're going to go forward with and still get. Look, Jay, anybody that says you have to just be old, yeah, cool. You want talent now too, and old talent, great, but there's a balance to it. And some of the guys we have coming in next year, I couldn't be more excited to coach them. They're all in and talented and about winning and about the right things. And then some of the transfers that we got, some guys, and this is nobody's wrong here. Anybody, the freedom and the option to decide whatever that you want to do as a coach, as a player, that's good for everybody. But transfers, they get one shot at this. And so our place isn't going to be for everybody because some want it to be where they can take the most shots or they can be by far the best player. And so we brought in 3 guys and then a 4th in Cameron Sheffield who's going to play a different role for us, but where those guys are just all in and want to be a part of winning. Didn't ask, do you promise me this or promise me that? It's a big time thing. And so I think you can feel my excitement for this group.
Donald, I thought that was amazing. First of all, the fact that he's talking about recruiting classes that are, 3, 4, 5 players at the most, that he's not going to have these larger recruiting classes. He doesn't want them going forward, and that he's planning on a couple impact transfers every single year, and he's really hoping to bring, 3 to 5 returnees back every. He said some years going to be 2. This year's 2, but he's hoping it's more like 3, 4, 5 returnees every year. I think that's very telling and very, very interesting commentary from him. And then, I mean, how could you not love what he had to say about the attitude, the personality? Nothing's promised. These guys are not looking for automatic playing time or to get more shots or anything like that. When he's talking about the transfers that he has coming in, it's really exciting. And by the way, it sort of melds into, as they continue to talk about the transfers. Scheyer told the story that he and the other coaches were meeting after the season and discussing, what they sort of wanted from the transfer portal. And Chris Carrawell said, oh, well, what we really need is a guy like Mason Gillis of Purdue. And there's like literally a couple days later, Mason Gillis enters the portal and they're like, oh my God. And he said he was on the phone. John Scheyer said he was on the phone to Matt Painter within a minute of Mason Gillis entering the transfer portal. And he also spoke about Sion James and saying that Sion James is going to have a coming out party at Duke because people are not aware of him from him playing in a smaller program. So apparently I'm not the only huge Sion James fan out there. John Scheyer is among the folks who think Sion James is going to open a lot of eyes at Duke this year.
First off, I think, this Jay Bilas guy, he might make it in this media thing because I thought
he
he was
think
very
so?
polished. Yeah, very polished as a podcast. So, he's been on this show, obviously, several times. He's a friend of the podcast. It feels like he's just more relaxed when he's on one of these things as opposed to on camera. And I get that, right? You're on TV versus audio, but it made for a great conversation. The reason why I bring that up is because it made for a great conversation and allowed for some of, these comments like the soundbite we just played to come out, right? You don't do that if it's a very rigid conversation. But in the case of John Scheyer, I think it's interesting in when we approach roster construction and how the coaching staff does it. I just hope he continues to have 4 things as he does this on a year-by-year basis. The 4 things are communication, transparency, honesty, and accountability. Communication, keep players in a loop about what they need to do, the roles, not just before they get here, when they get here. As I mentioned, like they mentioned that some of the coaches have been telling them what they want them to work on this summer, that sort of thing throughout the season. That's going to be key. Transparency, be open with the team about plans where he sees them, what type of players he plans to pursue in future classes, things like that. Honesty, be forthcoming with those players when plans change, because as Mike Tyson once said, everyone has a plan until they're punched in the face. We probably had a plan last year of what was going to happen and who we were going to get. And then a bunch of things happened and we got punched in the face, and now we're responding to that. So be transparent and be honest about that. And then accountability. Keep himself and his coaches accountable to these players, the program, recognize when things aren't working or you fell short in a certain area, revert back to the other 3 to get you back on the path where, again, you look like a stock chart instead of something else. So I really like the approach. Again, we took, a couple years ago when he first took over, he talked about how he didn't really want to have maybe like 1 or 2 guys coming in and recruiting classes. But then again, the punch in the face was the transfer portal being what it is, NIL becoming what it is, and the changing landscape. And these conferences, we'll talk about how the mega conferences are going to impact recruiting and transfers going forward. So all those things he's reacting to, and why people are saying, why are we, losing so many guys to the portal and why we're doing that. Thankfully, it took a year for us to get hit, get that punch in the face in the form of the transfer portal. Now we're punching back, and now we have a plan for when every year happens, what we're going to try and do. And like he said, some of that may change one way or the other, but I'm glad they have a plan and they're being transparent and forward about it, because I think that helps everyone understand what's in his mind when he's going after certain players like he does.
Hey, last couple things I have on this outstanding episode of the Brotherhood Podcast, this interview with John Scheyer. Scheyer mentioned something to me that I think is really interesting. He said in past seasons, they have focused in the summer mostly on individual skill work and strength work, that kind of stuff. He said they're going to try more team-related activities and team work together this year. I think that's really an interesting, little insight, perhaps, into what they're trying to build. It It is possible that because of the number of experienced transfers that they have, and because of because Proctor and Foster are two guys who've been in the program, that maybe he doesn't feel like they need quite as much of the individual work, that melding these guys together as a team makes more sense. And then the last thing was, toward the very end of the episode, Jay Bilas talks about Coach K and the longevity that Coach K had at Duke and the life lessons that they all learned from being there with Coach K. And he just came out and said it. He was like, I know lots of other guys who didn't go to Duke who say they just don't have a connection with their program anymore. That the head coach who I knew has been gone, 10, 15, 20 years from that program. He moved on to someplace else. Jay talks about the fact that he was recruited by Iowa, by Dr. Tom Davis. And Tom Davis, the next year left went to, sorry, not Tom Davis, Lute Olson. Sorry, my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. He talked about the fact that Lute Olson left Iowa and went to Arizona. And he's like, if I'd gone to Iowa, I wouldn't have had the same coach for throughout my career there. And that Duke is one of the reasons Duke is so special. One of the reasons Duke has the Brotherhood. One of the reasons all these guys feel such a connection to the program is because of the longevity, the continuity that we had with Coach K there. And Jay then merged that into saying the fact that John knew and was part of this and was at Coach K's side for so long and has now transitioned into being the coach. And, they don't mention it, but you would think John Scheyer is going to be the coach at Duke for a long, long, long time. That this is just something special that other programs just don't have. And that it is something that bonds all these guys, even the guys who only did 1 year at Duke. It bonds all of them to the program, to the place, to each other in a way that there's no other programs out there that have the same kind of feel.
I'm glad you mentioned those two things back to back because they kind of go hand in hand. The continuity that we have with the program, with Coach K leading into John Scheyer over the last 45 years, that continuity that we have is the reason why we're doing team building exercises this summer, because the team for 2024-25 does not have enough of the continuity from 2023 to 2024, right? There's only, 3 or 4 guys, 5 guys from that team who will come back, 2 of which were, regular contributors. So you have to learn how to play as a team. Like you mentioned, some of these, the transfers, yeah, they don't need any individual work, or they may not need much in the form of what they need to do to improve. Those guys are 23, 24 years old. But the freshmen will need some individual work. But what's going to be important about this team is how they all play with each other. And the fact that, again, that they're here so early, that they've been here since the 3rd week in May instead of the 3rd week in June, that's an extra month of getting to know each other as a team, where they're going to be on the court, all those little detailed things that you don't want to work out in November and December. You want them worked out before that, so that you hit November, December, and you're hopefully as close to a well-oiled machine with a little bit of tinkering as you possibly can, because you know each other super, super well, like the back of your hand. So that's something that I'm looking for this summer, and I'm glad that he approached it that way, because it is going to be important with a team with this much expectation that they approach it as a team.
All right, before we take a break, Donald, I just want to quickly mention this. We've touched on this a little bit, but I want to update everyone. The word from The Athletic, from Sam Charania, is that the LA Lakers are pretty much decided. They're pretty much ready to hire JJ Redick as their next coach. The team apparently loves his organizational skills. They love his potential as someone who can build a long-term winning culture. They think he's someone who would command the locker room, hold players accountable, have the respect of players, tirelessly game plan. And they just see JJ Redick as ideal for those kind of things. And apparently, they see in him another Pat Riley, someone who will be a inspirational and strategic genius. Folks may not remember, but Pat Riley, when he was made head coach of the Lakers back in 1981, he'd been an assistant coach for a year and a half. Prior to that, Pat Riley had been a broadcaster. He was the color commentary guy on Laker games. So he was not someone who had a great long experience in the coaching ranks, moving up through the coaching ranks. He, again, been an assistant for a year and a half, and suddenly he found himself as head coach of the Lakers leading them right away to an NBA title and to legendary success. And I think it's really interesting. Again, Pat Riley was a broadcaster. JJ Redick, yeah, he's a broadcaster. He's really a podcast guy. And I think that podcast background has shown people he's someone who's willing to speak the truth, someone who's super analytical. I mean, people who listen to JJ's podcasts, I should say, he has multiple of them. They're aware this guy is super smart about basketball, thinks about basketball in creative kind of ways. And rather than being a podcaster, being sort of like a negative credential almost, a blowhard or something like that, you can maybe call them that instead it's a positive, and that the Lakers see it as a major calling card that shows that JJ is someone who's able to articulate his vision of how basketball should be played. And I just think that's fascinating. And I just want to let teams know that if they want, I'm available. I'm also a podcaster. I'm available. I don't have to be a head coach. I'll be an assistant coach and learn a little bit first. But, I just want to put that out there. If JJ is going to be head coach of the Lakers, I can be assistant coach of the Atlanta Hawks. Quinn, buddy, give me a call, baby. I'm here for you.
I'm first of all, I love JJ. I'm super happy that he's getting a head coaching job. It appears, right? Everyone's been, basically saying at this point that it's a done deal. I think he's going to be a fantastic coach and have a fantastic career. It is still curious to me that he would want his first job to be the Lakers, because the Lakers is a team that's just in flux right now with, one of his best friends, LeBron James, who he shares a podcast with, planning to become a free agent after the summer. And right now they're over the luxury tax. They have a mid-level exception. They have to basically cut everybody who is a free agent for them to have any space to sign anybody. And the biggest question that the Lakers have right now is, are they going to draft Bronny James so that they can keep LeBron? Like, these are things that obviously JJ understands and is smart and can navigate, but it's going to be a tall task for him to do that. And especially at a organization where the bar is winning championships. Like, they won the first in-season tournament this year and made the playoffs, and that wasn't enough for Darvin Ham to keep his job. So how do you get beyond that and take it to the next level with, kind of being hamstrung by the current, salary and the current roster that you have? If anyone can get out of it, is JJ. But I'm hoping that it's not a baptism by fire, so to speak, his introduction into coaching, being a part of this particular cleanup, because it's going to take some tinkering to get the team that he needs to play the way that he would want to play. And I'm curious to know what that is, right? Given that he doesn't have any coaching experience. It's easy, I wouldn't say it's easy, right? There's one thing about being on a podcast and talking about the X's and O's and the tactics and what you want to do. He is so cerebral in that regard. You could tell that as a player, and even as like a leader on the court, you could tell that he understood where guys needed to be. He kind of reads the game the same way LeBron does, kind of two, 3 plays, passes at a time. It's harder. The question is, can he coach that to a team? And some guys don't have that ability to do that. They may have it all here, but they don't figure out how to take it from their head and put it to their mouth and speak it to guys where it can resonate with him. So that's what I'm curious about for JJ. Is he able to do that? If he is, this turnaround is going to be quicker than even I expect. But that's going to be the tall task facing these Lakers, even with JJ at the helm. But I'm really excited that he is getting into coaching it. And it's funny because I was equally excited to see him call the NBA Finals, and it seems like there's going to be a grand opening, grand closing. This will be his first and only NBA Finals that he's going to be broadcasting, at least from the A desk. So he has a big week ahead of him. It's going to be very fun to watch how that works, or a couple weeks. So it's going to be very fun to see how he navigates all that. But I'm really looking forward to seeing him in his coaching career and seeing what he can do.
Hey, really quick, while we're on the topic of the NBA Finals, what's your prediction, my friend? Is it going to be a Lively and Kyrie ring, or will Jason Tatum get his first?
I love Jason Tatum. I really do. I hate the Celtics. I'm going with Mavs in 6. I also think, we talk about Lively and Kyrie Irving. I think the X factor here is actually Luka Doncic. If Luka Doncic is playing at the all-world level that he's been playing the last couple of weeks, it's gonna be a really good series. But I think the Mavs take it.
So the Boston Celtics are on, even though people are not really talking about that much, they're on a pretty darn impressive run. They're 12-2 so far in these playoffs. They've done that largely without Kristaps Porzingis at all. Kristaps Porzingis is apparently back, has been practicing and participating in full contact scrimmages for several days with the team. The Celtics were far and away, the best team in the NBA by virtually every analytic possible this past season. I will take the Celtics in 5. That's right. Celtics
5
in
games.
5. That's 5 games. That's what I say. I think that we are seeing a coronation. And there was an article in The Athletic that asked about this. Are we in an era of NBA parity? Regardless of who wins, we'll have the 6th different NBA champion in the past 6 years this year, which sounds like unbelievable parity. And it is. But this article pointed out that perhaps we're on the cusp of the Celtics launching into another dynasty. I think that very well may be what we're looking at right now, and that this is step 1 in what will probably be multiple titles for Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and the other guys they have around them there on the Celtics.
And they were in the finals last year, and I think
no, they were in the finals 2 years ago.
2 years
Last
ago
year,
against
they were in the conference finals, and Tatum got injured at the start of Game 7. And there are a lot of people who say if that hadn't happened.
And before that, they were in the conference finals. Before they made their first finals, they were in the so they've had a string of if you think back to the 80s, Pistons, right? Like I think about the Bad Boys, they kind of kept getting to the cusp and missing. Then they went to the finals and then they missed. Is this the 89, NBA finals where they finally get through? That's the question.
Exactly. All right. With that, we're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we're going to tip our hat to 14 different Duke programs that all scored perfect numbers in the NCAA's academic progress report. And we're going to update you on what the Duke men are doing in terms of their academic progress, because it is a little controversial. We'll have that story in just a moment. This episode of the Duke Basketball Roundup is sponsored by BetterHelp.
Wow, the year feels like it's flown by. As we enter the summer, it is the time to take note of the wins that life has brought you. And it's a good time to make adjustments for the rest of 2024. Talking to someone about those wins and improvements can help you recalibrate and give you something to focus on for the remaining months of the year.
That's right, Donald. That's where BetterHelp can provide the alley-oop. Getting advice from a therapist can help you keep the focus on the good things in life and learn how to handle the hard better. It's online, it's flexible, and you get to fit it within your schedule. You just fill out a questionnaire and you get matched to a professional that can serve as your guide, and you can switch anytime you wish.
So if you need help setting those goals to carry you through 2024, try BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/DukeBB. That's DUKEBB today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/DukeBB.
Donald, we're back from the break, and the NCAA has released its academic progress report, the APR number. They released it just yesterday. This covers all sports, men's and women's, across, every school in the NCAA. And if you get a perfect, by the way, your score is determined by how many scholarship players you have, and did they, were they academically eligible? Did they stay in school? Those are sort of the two key numbers for each and every one of these players. And if everybody stays in school and everybody remains academically eligible, you get a score of 1,000. That's a perfect score, is 1,000. And the NCAA reports this as a 4-year moving average. It's worth noting, even though the school year for Duke ended just a couple weeks ago, the numbers we're getting now are for the 2022-23 team. So it's like Derek Lively and those guys. Derek Lively, Derek Whitehead.
It takes a year for them to put all that
sort
together.
through all of it. Exactly. It is not the most current Duke team. It's the team from a year ago. But I want to initially tip my hat to 14 Duke University varsity athletic programs that had a perfect 1,000 score, which means that for every year over the past 4 years, from 2019 to 2023, every single one of those years, these teams had every single person stay academically eligible and return to school. And those programs are field hockey, men's cross country, men's golf, men's lacrosse, men's soccer, men's track and field, wrestling, softball, women's cross country, women's fencing, women's golf, women's soccer, women's swimming and diving, women's track and field, and volleyball. That's a long list.
That's good. We like long lists when it comes to academics.
Right. It is really, really great. Now, Donald, let's get to the men's basketball team. So the men's basketball scored a 933 as their 4-year rolling average, which is honestly not a great number. In fact, you have to be above 930. Technically, you need to be above 930 to qualify for playing in championships. What happens if teams fall below? They'll do appeals and things like it's pretty rare now for teams.
You get like waivers and you basically get like you get a chance to get some extra credit, right? Like you stay after school, do a couple things and then they wipe some stuff off of your old grade.
Right. But a year ago on this podcast, you and I were talking about the fact that Duke had in the year 2021-2022, the Coach K's final year, the year we made the NCAA Final Four, Duke had posted an abysmally bad number. Our number was 829. And that by averaging that 829 in over the course of several years, because again, this is a 4-year rolling average, that Duke was in danger of falling below 930. And that, that 829 just looks awful. Well, yes, I said Duke has a 933, and I know I'm tossing out tons of numbers. People's eyes are glazing over as we speak. But that 933 is actually a pretty good number when you consider that we have the 829 averaged into it. In fact, the 2022-2023 team, the team with Derek Lively, Dariq Whitehead, Jeremy Roach, Kyle Filipowski, all these other guys, that team actually scored a 1,000 individually as one team, which is a very, very impressive thing considering you have guys who are preparing for pro careers and the such like that. So a year ago, we were here to lay bare that 829 score. Well, I wanted to come back a year later and say, hat tip to the Duke men's basketball team for scoring an impressive 1,000. And I dearly hope, I know we had 7 guys transfer out. I know we had a couple other guys turn pro. So there could have been distractions. There could have been things going on this spring that may have affected some of these guys, but I dearly hope that next year when we get the number, it is again a 1,000 and that these guys kept up, even as they were dealing with transfers, even as they were dealing with preparing for the NBA, that these guys continue to focus on finishing up their studies and finishing up the school year. Because as William Avery showed us just a short time ago, if you keep working at it, even if you leave early, you can get that degree from Duke. And that sheepskin that says DUKE on it, it means something.
I appreciate it. It's funny, right? Where some people are going to be like, you're applauding them for doing what they're supposed to be doing. Yes, because not every college athlete does that, right? Not every athlete graduates. Not every athlete does the school work. And you have some schools, and we talk about like old movies like The Program, where you're like, yeah, just paper courses and things like that. You can't do that at Duke. I've been in, when I was in school, Jason, you were in school, we were in classes with these guys. We're in classes with all these athletes. They're studying and learning the same work you are. So if they're in paper courses, then you are too. Nobody is at Duke. And it's very, very hard to do well at Duke and excel and get all your schoolwork done and top of all of the extracurricular things that you may be doing. And then on top of that, for them, they are also athletes competing at the top level of college sports. It's very, very hard to do all that. So I am here to say, yes, congratulations on doing what you're supposed to be doing, staying in the classroom, getting your work done, and taking care of your responsibilities, because that is something that needs to be done. And I'm glad that, Jason, that you and I and Sam, when he was on the show, that we pay particular interest to this, because we are fans of the student athlete. And yes, the student comes first. So I'm really, really pleased to see not just the men's basketball team are staying minding their P's and Q's, but also the plethora of programs that you just listed, Jason, that have had perfect scores, that everybody at Duke, the athletic department, is making this a priority focus. And, all the resources that they are talking about they need for all these different things, from NIL to facilities. One thing that they have not been skimping on is, the academic resources that are needed, the libraries, the tutors, the facilities for studies, and when they're away from wait on the road, right, renting a ballroom so that they can have a quiet place to study and do homework and do projects. Like, those are things that other schools aren't doing. So I'm glad that Duke is continuing to put that first and continuing to make that a priority, and it's showing in all these reports.
All right, Donald, with that, we're going to wrap it up here on the latest edition of the DBR podcast. We had sort of thought we were going to do something about ACC transfers. I've got that in my back pocket. We're saving that. We'll hold on to it. Yeah, it'll be on an upcoming episode very, very soon. I did a little bit of research, a little bit of looking into, some of the very, very prominent ACC players who have moved around to other ACC programs, which is just like crazy to me. I mean, well, like I said, we'll talk about it. Duke certainly is part of this, but man, there's some other programs in the ACC that are just like, they're not going to even be able to believe who's suiting up opposite them next season. It's an interesting little topic, but again, we're wrapping it up here on episode 630 of the DBR podcast. We remind all of you, send us those emails, dbrpodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We love it when you do that. At some point, Donald, we got to look at all the, all those reviews that we get on Apple and the other platforms, and pick out some of the really good reviews and just say thank you to some people for saying nice things about you and me and what we've been doing here for 630 plus episodes over the past, we're coming up on 10 years.
Decade. We're
coming up on 10 years. I didn't even think about that until this very moment. Sometime this fall, like December or so.
We recorded episode 0 on my birthday in 2014.
Damn, that's all we need.
I gotta find episode 0. That's going to be my goal for the summer. Is find episode 0, and we'll post it on the 10-year anniversary so people can see how terrified we were of starting this thing.
Oh my God. Oh. In any event, he's Donald. I'm Jason. We love you all. Here's the Duke Band to play us out, take us home.